Celebrity, to me, has always meant being an icon. And Dean Martin, I think, really understood iconization, if you will, in that he knew how to wear clothes, he knew they made a big statement, he knew you make very fast impressions, and yet he still had enormous personality within creating a classic figure. When you think about the late 50s, the 60s, the early 70s, like, who were the icons of masculinity? Dean Martin was absolutely one of this kind of gangster style, but cool, super cool. Like Vegas, gangsters, Rat Pack, that was the epitome of cool.
Dean, he really was the Rat Pack, you know. He was the funniest. He was certainly the most charming. He was really a good guy.
He was smart enough to understand that a movie star is supposed to have something of their own and something iconic. So he's wearing a classic suit with classic ties, great-looking shirts. The red pocket square was his thing, you know, and also it throws a little color. Red is very romantic. Women like red. He was very much of a romantic singer and actor. He was always the leading man.
I can see him alongside Matt Damon and George Clooney.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt, particularly in the Ocean's films, really model themselves after Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Without a doubt, that cool, that kind of wearing fabulous clothes. The clothes are expensive and great and beautifully cut, but also looking like you fell out of bed in them. Like wearing in the most throwaway, casual, because you're just cool.
It's Dean's style, Dean Martin's style, that sets the tone of it, you know. Smooth, there's the word, Dino Crescetti.
All kidding aside, I've been a fan of Dean's all my life, and I think you look terrific. Doesn't he look terrific? I mean, isn't it just amazing what an embalmer can do?
Dean Martin had a wonderful figure, gorgeous figure. He was slim, trim, but really built.
He was taller than Frank and the other guys he hung with. So he always looked taller. And he had very broad shoulders. And like he had that sort of triangle thing going on. And I don't think people really worked out much then. It was obviously genetics.
Well, yeah, he always looked great. He had a great body. And that's number one. You can't be a fashionista if you don't have a great body for it.
Where'd you get that outfit, Griff?
I got it from Dean.
You look like you mugged a buffalo.
I had to take care of Dean's wardrobe because I was a wardrobe man to begin with when I started with him. And when we would go to Vegas or whatever, the clothes, when he took them off at his house, the housekeepers would send them off to the cleaners, and then another housekeeper would get them back when they were delivered, and God knows where she'd put them, in what closet, whatever. So I just told Mort Viner, who was Dean's agent and manager, I said, Mort, I've got to keep Dean's clothes with me because otherwise we'll never find him. So I kept Dean's clothes with me, and I would take them with me back and forth to Vegas. And this one time we took off for Vegas, and everything was wonderful, so I got up and realized I didn't have Dean's boots. And all we had there was his light brown boots that he wears all the time, which he couldn't wear with a tuxedo. And his boots were custom made, so I couldn't go out and buy a pair in Vegas or something. I had to go get a cab, get back on a plane, come back to Los Angeles, and sitting in the chair by the door were Dean's boots. Get the boots, get another flight out early in the morning and get back to Vegas before anybody knew that I was gone.
What's that expression, shoes make the man? It tells you a lot about them. Women tend to generally wear nice shoes, but men, a lot of men wear like old shoes, sneakers. The fact that he wore like beautifully handmade shoes, which I'm sure were crazy expensive then, and that they were probably always shined, meant a constant attention to detail and also a feeling, like, because again, people don't necessarily see them from the stage or from a film, a feeling of wanting to be elegant and sophisticated. Good shoes will make a difference.
They were all custom made, as were his tuxedos, his shirts, everything was custom made because he really was a fashionista, so to speak. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, those kind of guys did have their clothes custom made. They could afford it, so they did it. And, it made them look better. I mean, anything that's tailored nice is certainly going to make somebody look much, much better if it's tailored than off the rack.
Buying off the rack things probably wouldn't fit so well. When we think of men's suits now, we think of Zegna and Kiton and Dolce & Gabbana and Prada, and a guy can go in and buy a suit like that in a great fabrication that's going to look really good on his body. But back then, not so much. The men's suits were kind of more boxy. So he wanted things that really accentuated like great physique.
He was a guy who loved to have the right clothes. His tailor was Cy DeVore, who was on Vine Street, I believe.
Cy DeVore is a very, very famous Hollywood couturier, if you will, who made many of the early suits of famous men. He really got it. He got tailoring, he got shape, he understood fabric, and that you want something that's really special, but you want to keep, clothes are really about the body. And also, if you're an actor, they're also about your image. And he really got that. And he made clothes for lots of Hollywood icons.
I don't know why you laughing, Dean. Here's a guy who passes himself off as a great dresser. His tuxedo's so shiny, if he tears it, you're gonna have 7 years bad luck.
His image was in the tuxedo. I mean, that was always the image outside of the showroom at the Las Vegas Celebrity Room, was Dean in his tux.
He was always in a tux, except in the later years we got him out of that a few times. But in the early days, no matter what he did, a sketch, he was always in the tux.
Dean was set in his ways. I mean, Dean always said to me, if it works, why change it? Don't change it if it works. Don't ever change anything that works. And that was his pet peeve, was anybody that would try to change something that he felt worked. So don't change it if it works. We tried to put him one time on one of the shows instead of a black tuxedo jacket, a red jacket with his black pants and all. And he said, why are we doing this? The black jacket works. Why are we changing it? So his whole attitude was, if it works, don't ever change it for anything, for any reason.
He understood enduring style. And, when you look at pictures of him, he looks like he could be right now. It never looks old or dated. I mean, the cuts of suits have changed to a certain degree, but he really could be dressed for right now.
Dean, you're a phenomenon. You look like Cary Grant and you smell like Ed McMahon.
It's interesting seeing what he wore when he wasn't wearing a suit, which was like a bright colored sweater vest with a shirt and a tie.
He would come to rehearsal in silk gabardine slacks, and he'd always be tan.
I don't remember a thing about working with Dean. I just kept staring at that tan, that perpetual tan of his.
It's interesting, who has a tan and who doesn't. That's always fun to watch. But in that period of time, 60s and 70s, there were not a lot of tans because the only way to get a tan was to sit in the sun and to have the money to go from anywhere to somewhere warm and also have leisure time to sit outside. So now, of course, anybody can spray on a tan or go in a tanning bed or have bronzer on, but, Dean Martin had the money and the time to be able to get a real tan.
Dean, there's one thing that I must say about you. He's always impeccably dressed. And I like that red handkerchief in your tux there. It's cute. It was white before I wiped his eyes.
He was very manly, but he was also very elegant and casual. But I think he was more masculine than kind of maybe any of these other guys because he had danger going on. When you think about it, like, what was cool to begin with? What did cool really mean? It meant rebellion. And so in that period of time, that's when the highball, the cocktail hour, the martini, all started to really kick in, that cocktail culture with cigarettes. And it just meant I'm reckless, I'm fearless, I know how to have fun, and I can be a bad boy. And women, to their, detriment, flock to that.
I think I have a terrible crush on him. I think any woman that ever worked with Dean would get a crush on him.
The cigarette and the drink in hand really added to the style because it was Dean. That was genuinely Dean.
The old style with a tux and an expensive watch and the rings and the all omnipresent cigarette and a drink.
He constantly was gesticulating with a cigarette. It's edgy, but sophisticated.
And your roastmaster, Dean Martin.
Nobody in the 70s realized that cigarettes were bad for your health. That's why they were ubiquitous. Hollywood embraced cigarettes. They were in every movie. Women smoking all the time, lipstick on the ends of cigarettes, smoking, highballs, suits, and men were men. You know, they were wearing suits, they wore ties, and they looked masculine and professional.
I think there was a lot of mystique about Dean because he wasn't somebody that went out and socialized and was in the Hollywood scene, so to speak. I think there was a mystique about Dean. And people enjoyed being around him when they would be able to get in a situation, whether it be taping a television show or just briefly backstage just to be in his presence.
He was elegant, he was handsome, he was fun to be with, and he made everybody feel warm and cozy. You just didn't want to leave his side. You wanted to be like him or have a little bit of him rub off onto you.
Dean, the rest of his soul, had a magnificent charm. He really did. And he made everything look like a party.
He really was a one-of-a-kind guy.
Not only did they want to be with him, but they wanted to be him. Impossible. Nobody could look like that.
I think Dean was really a gentleman's gentleman. And I think he was somebody that a lot of men would want to emulate. I mean, he was suave and handsome, a man that women swooned over. Dean was somebody that, you know, a lot of men would like to emulate and, you know, wish they could sing like he could too.
Now, you know, the idea of what's masculine is jeans for sure, clothes that are like really tight, I think too tight, generally. Sneakers, you know, all the hip hop guys, leather jacket, t-shirt. It's very casual and throwaway, and it's really a shame. I love looking at guys like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra wearing hats, pocket squares. It reminds you that people lived, in a way, more glamorous lives then.
Good night, everyone.